What is up, everyone? Today we'll be doing part 2 of What If Naruto was Grimmjow Jaeger-Yaka's reincarnation. Now, last time I had left off, right before the team selection part of the exams, graduation, whatever you want to say, they already passed. Forgive me. But now they're just seeing what team they're going to be placed on. So we'll be going over that, the bell test, and hopefully at least just a portion of the landed waves. Yeah, and I realized I had a problem of realizing who Neliel's friend was, like his name. His name was Piche, and their pet is Bow Bow, and I guess they're gonna be in the story somewhat like just getting around, or specifically like Bow Bow. But yeah, without further ado, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Bring that heat, boy.
So we now start this what if, or resume this what if, as Naruto wakes up the next day, right? He meets up with Sasuke and they head over to the academy. Now, once they head over there, he had heard from Neji how this part goes, because Neji was in Fight Club, and pretty much like he sort of gave him advice on about what's gonna happen, and like there's some sort of test. Obviously, each test vary from each sensei. So Naruto and Sasuke would head over to the academy, in which they would walk in. Now, once they would walk in, they would start to get a look of the place, looking around, seeing who's here. And it was mostly Konoha 12. I'm gonna be honest, I think those are the only people who passed, if I'm not wrong. And they'd kind of just wave to each other, say their greetings, and they would sit down. So Ruka would come in a few minutes later. They're all sitting down, Naruto and Neliel and Sasuke. They're just chilling. Now Ruka would walk in which he would start to explain what will be happening. He's going to explain to them that he's going to tell them which team they're in, and they will wait for their senseis to come pick them up. So he would then go over the teams, team 10 being, Shikocho, Shikamaru and Choji. Team 8 would be Hinata, Kiba, and Shino. And Team 7 would be Naruto, Sasuke, and Neliel. Obviously, Baba, Piche, Choka, they'd be considered sort of her technique, like she creates them, and that's kind of how I'm gonna insinuate that here, because I'd feel like that kind of be a little more appropriate due to the fact of how the world works in Naruto. So pretty much after this, Kurenai and Asuma, they'd come in pretty quick. They were pretty much there waiting, you could say. But when it came to their proctor, or their sensei, he was about maybe an hour at least before he came. So Naruto in this time, he's sort of just like fighting himself, doing a bit of shadow boxing, like sort of forming his Ryatsu into like another version of himself, right? And he's just trying to imagine fighting himself, right? He would do that a bit. He'd find a way to beat himself momentarily, of course. It's very much like impossible to beat yourself. There'd have to be some insinuating circumstance for you to actually beat yourself. But that sounded sus. Don't think of it in that way. But now he would start to imagine other people he knows are way stronger than him at this point, and trying to like imagine how far he can go, right? Trying to extend his limits of his strength. And he would imagine like different people like Hiruzen and some of the other Kage from other villages, and he enjoyed fighting like the Raikage, obviously the Hokage with his adamantine staff, and obviously fighting the Reincarnation against his lightning cloak, seeing if his Zero can actually like penetrate his lightning armor. And she would probably do that for their hour, like they were there. Obviously Sasuke would be doing that. He's like looking at him, sort of admiring Naruto's fighting style, because he's basically Naruto's right hand man, sort of how like Grimmjow had Premeire Espadas, who like kind of came to him and served him. Sasuke wouldn't be too much like them. Like he'd be like his homie pretty much. And so after this would occur, Kakashi would then come in and explain to everyone that they were gonna be going to the roof, doing introductions and getting started. And everyone pretty much understood that as Team 7 went upstairs. Now once they got upstairs, Kakashi would explain to them the basics, like how to introduce yourself, like name, likes, dislikes, and goal. And so I'll be having Naruto go first, then Neliel, and then Sasuke, right? And Naruto would say his likes is training, hanging out with his friends, and obviously just fighting in general. He also likes just finding people who are strong, right? His dislikes is people who try to undermine him, right? Because of his age, because of his personality, and things like that, just undermine him in general. And his goal is to be king, right? And obviously this can be symbolic, this can be literal, but he just wants to be king. Because that's what Grimmjow's goal is, to pretty much be king of Lake Mundo. And that's what he aspires to be, and hopefully we can accomplish that. Now Neliel would go next, right? Neliel is completely different from the other Spada, right? She doesn't just solely serve Aizen or go about being a higher being, right? She just wants to protect her friends, Dandachoka, Piche, and Bao Bao. It's a pretty simple goal, right? Not saying that's a bad thing, that's honestly quite fine. But she would just say how her likes, usual things like training, eating, hanging out with her friends, and her dislikes being the usual stereotypical things that people just don't like. Mainly being like people who try to be superior, right? Like she just doesn't like that. For example, like oppressors. I mean, who likes oppressors? Unless you are the oppressor. But oppression's based on perception. But that would be mostly her goal. I mean, her goal is just to protect her friends, kind of like a protector idealism kind of thing here. And yeah, now we go over to Sasuke. So Sasuke, his likes will be training, fighting. Like once he met Naruto, he realized like the feeling of fighting, like he truly loved it. And also training, hanging out with Naruto, trying to he didn't, obviously he would then go over his dislikes, being I guess stagnating, like he doesn't want to feel weak, like he doesn't want to get weak. He wants to constantly train so he can hone his skill against Itachi. Obviously, you would then say his goal is to kill Itachi. I mean, not Itachi, but he would say he wanted to kill someone, and that was his goal in general. So now, once this is over, Kakashi, he nodded his head. It's like, that's not too bad. I can respect some of these goals. And now we go over what would be the belt test. So Kakashi explained to them what the rules will be, and everyone would understand that, right? No eating, be there in the early morning, a little bit after the sun rises, other things like that, basic things. And they'd all nod their head, right? So Kakashi, you disperse into a shadow clone, and now we go to the next day. So the next day, Naruto, Sasuke had spent the day training before then going to sleep, right? And obviously Neliel had joined. As Naruto and Sasuke and Neliel, they all known each other for years practically, so they're pretty much friends, and now they're slowly remembering what they were doing. They can't really get a picture, but whenever they would sort of meditate, they would see someone. They can't really get the face out, but it's saying like, take over this world. Other paraphrasing when it came to that. Be king, obviously, just appealing to Grimmjow or Naruto's goal here being wanting to be king, one of this planet and the other residing planets around them. Obviously, when it came to Neliel, they all been loyal to Aizen. Obviously, I guess you can argue that would change now, or after she had allied with Ichigo, that changed, right? And sort of kind of appealed to her side, because she was sort of like always the underling, right? Because now Haribel, she became queen of Wakamundo, even though Neliel thinks she's stronger, or at least she believes so. Obviously, I actually don't know who's stronger between the two. Like, I didn't really genuinely think it out, but this would appeal to that, right? And obviously, this would kind of go into the factor of them realizing what they were here to do, being taken over the nearby land, and that's what they sort of would realize in the future. I'd say by Shippuden's time, or at least when their plan comes into fruition. Now, we go to the next day. So they'd all get ready and head over to the training ground, in which once they would get there, they would see each other, and they would just honestly just start training, realizing Kakashi was going to be late, like he was yesterday. So I'd give it about maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 at the most, and Kakashi would be there. It would have been high morning, like almost near noon, but not really there yet. It would, like 11 a.m. Think of like that. And Kakashi would, appear, and he would start to explain to them what they'll be doing, and they would understand. As he'd bring out the bells, he'd just tell them like only 2 of you can pass, and other requirements and components of the bell test. So once he would explain this, he would initiate the bell test as he would say start. Naruto immediately ran at him, right? Using Sonido, he would reappear behind Kakashi before Kakashi could even just right after he said start, right? As Sasuke was just as ready as him, activating his Sharingan to the two Tomoe, he had used the body flicker to appear in front of him, as he would try to, not directly in front of him, just maybe a few feet away, before trying to do a fireball jutsu. As Kakashi realizing this, as he couldn't go behind him or go to the right, as he was pretty much surrounded, as to the right Neliel was there, and Naruto, I guess in a sense, would be able to go to any direction, so he felt pretty much surrounded. As they were all going right at him, as they could protect themselves from the fire with the Hieru, and obviously right as Kakashi's about to get hit, they would see Kakashi disappear into lightning, as he had used the lightning shadow clone on them. Doing research on their abilities and strength in their underground fighting club. I mean, honestly, Kakashi's an elite Jonin. I'd feel like he'd be able to find out what they were doing and realize their strength. So he was prepared. You can even argue that's why he was late, or at least in this what if here. As he was then seen far away, as they obviously Naruto and Neliel tanked the attack, but they were breathing heavily, and you can see the brown smoke coming off them. So they're just a smoke coming off of them, as they got hit by the attack. Well, Sasuke, fire and lightning, we know that doesn't go well. So the explosion kind of erupted, and Sasuke was kind of hit by it. But Naruto really took most of the attack, as he was closer, and he had his Hieru, so he managed to tank the attack. Kakashi would be watching from afar as he realized he drained a quarter of his chakra. Using that as the lightning shadow clone is quite draining technique, especially for someone as him. I guess a technique so composed, and obviously he is joning, so it takes more chakra to fully mature. It's, for example, Naruto can use so many shadow clones because he has so much chakra. Obviously, since Kakashi doesn't have as much as him, he can't really use as much lightning shadow clones. I don't know why that took us much long to explain, but there it is. So Kakashi would make a bunch of clones to psych out Team 7. Not really like shadow clones, but sort of more lightning shadow clones, just 2 of them, as he didn't want to drain more of his chakra before he could use the Sharingan. I mean, not before he can use it, before he can utilize it against Team 7. So he already had his headband up and everything, realizing their potency and they, how he shouldn't undermine them. So he'd be walking carefully throughout the branches, as suddenly someone would come from behind him, as like a katana was coming towards his face. As he would quickly react with his reflexes and equipped his kunai before then clashing with the attacker. As he would looked up, it was Neliel. She was holding her katana, as she actually was pretty good. Like, besides her look, like she doesn't seem like a kendo user. She actually seemed like she was in this right stance and everything. As Naruto would then come from behind him, sort of taking him by surprise, as he was already in shock that Neliel had a sword and was using it fluently, as he had to duck by bending backwards, as he had caught the Tsuba before then trying to hold Naruto down while trying to run, because like Naruto, Sasuke, and Neliel are coming after him. He has to rethink his plans. So what he plans to do is have Naruto waste his energy by using Seros, and for the same for Neliel, and push them to have to use more techniques which would then exert their power. And obviously Kakashi isn't as knowledgeable as them when it came to using their techniques, so this is just his theory from watching them. And obviously Sasuke, he's easily stronger than Sasuke at this point, because Sasuke only has the 2 Tomoe and he has the 3 Tomoe, so it's kind of basic logic that Kakashi would be stronger here, and obviously he had the Sharingan longer. So now they'd all be meeting back at the main forest, in which Team 7 had actually came up with a plan of their own. They were going to take advantage of the chakra usage, mass chakra use of his Sharingan. Whenever he gets low on chakra, he wouldn't be able to see as much, and obviously his eyes would start to get tired, or not tired, but chakra exhausted, sort of lessening the quality of his Sharingan. And Sasuke, being a user of the Sharingan, he knows sort of like what it means for non-Uchiha to use the Sharingan. Like, they don't have the blood of the Uchiha to use it properly. So he would mix his fire style with Neliel Sero as Grimmjow. Naruto would use his Sero and send it at Neliel so she can eat the Sero and then shoot it back with twice the potency, as this would mix with a fireball, as Kakashi would be standing there, as he had barely any chakra to make a clone. Not barely, but just enough, as he had made a clone and used the headhunter jutsu, going under Neliel. Reason why? Because she can multiply the power of the Seros. She seems to be more knowledgeable on how to use Sonido for now at this point. So he had to get rid of her, and then he would go after Naruto and then Sasuke. So he would appear behind, under her, and grab her by the feet, holding her down. While then his actual self, the clone, basically the clone that did I'm fucking up here. Basically, he had made another clone while inside, just not really shadow clone, just a sort of lightning shadow clone. Now, I'm implicating here, we don't know how much chakra lightning shadow clones take, or lightning. Yeah, that's right, lightning shadow clones. We don't know how much chakra they take, but I'd say they take less than shadow clones. So whenever he's lightning shadow clones holding her down, he would use it on her as she'd get hit by it, not really having her hieru up, thinking the attack actually hit Kakashi, as her pesquisa can't really see past, at this point, can't really see past clones, as no one really in Bleach made actual like clones like they did in Naruto, so she wasn't really used to users of that just yet. And since Naruto doesn't really use techniques, like he'd be the only one that used shadow clones, she wouldn't really see the difference. So now Naruto's seeing this, you know, he's a little kind of put back, but he sort of recovers as he finally sort of releases more of his power, like starts to adapt to Kakashi. As once he realized Kakashi had come up, he'd start to get into a hand-to-hand with Naruto, and Naruto having a wild, unpredictable fighting style, it'd be hard for Kakashi to fight Naruto. And with the assistance of Sasuke, and like them knowing how to use certain body techniques to direct chakra to a certain point to help them fighting, it would be pretty hard for him to keep up. So for once they were fighting off, Naruto would tell Sasuke of his new plan, as he would need Sasuke to try to use a shadow clone, just one. And obviously, since Sasuke doesn't have enough chakra, he understands that he can't make as many. So he was going to have a shadow clone hold Kakashi down, like Kakashi's style, sort of his style, the headhunter style, as Naruto would then take the bells. They need to do this quickly. Their goal is not to fight Kakashi, it's to take the bells. And it's kind of weird and out of character for Naruto to do this, because he wants to fight Kakashi, but he realizes Kakashi's holding back, and because it's an exercise, not a death battle. And he senses like another strength in Kakashi, which is yet to be used, being the Mangekyo. So he wants to wait for Kakashi to get stronger, like a fruit, like a ripe fruit, before then fighting him. So the plan would go down as said. Sasuke would make a clone and substitute to Naruto, and obviously Sasuke would be watching from afar as the clone fights Kakashi. Now Sasuke would then come from behind Kakashi, holding him down while the clone takes a bit of punches at Kakashi, before then jumping away, dispersing, as Naruto would then come, or Sunido, in front of Kakashi or near him to get into hand range to then grab the bells. Now, we then grab the bells, throwing them to Sasuke and Neliel, as Kakashi had asked him why he had given the bells to Sasuke and Neliel instead of keeping one for himself. And when she had remembered that there was no such thing as a 3-man team, there had to be a 4-man team, 3 Genins and 1 Jonin. He lived with Hiruzen. He understood the customs of ninja, and he knew this just wasn't possible. As Kakashi had realized he shouldn't have done this test, because Naruto was knowledgeable on the ninja customs, and he would have easily figured it out. But still, Naruto did give him a good fight. And Naruto felt the same too, because he just loves fighting. And he's fighting the second strongest Jonin in the village. Obviously, you can argue DMS Kakashi over Guy, but we're not there. We're talking just base forms at this point. I'd say Guy's a little bit stronger. But, yeah. So, after the bell test were to go relatively the same, Team 7 would be going through the 1 week of missions of capturing cats, doing farm work or agricultural work, just helping the citizens of Konoha out. And Naruto being the guy who likes to fight a lot, he just isn't satisfied by these types of missions. And he would ask Kakashi, like, not ask, he was basically demanding, but I'm saying ask just for like the story, to give them a better mission. And Kakashi sort of agrees here. Naruto, Sasuke, and Elio, they were throwing hands with him at one point. so they definitely should deserve to go on this mission, as he would request it from the Hokage, and the Hokage, knowing Naruto's strength, he would agree. So now we go over that. So we go over Tazuna walking in. So Tazuna would then walk in, as his face cheeks were reddened, as his eyes were sort of, how do I say, red in like everywhere but the pupil. I forgot what the term is for that. But his eyes were just out of it. Like, he looked dazed, right? And they'd realize, like, their client is a drunk. So he, obviously Hiruzen would explain to them that they were going to be escorting this man to the land of the waves, and also protecting him while he builds the bridge between the land of the waves and the Mist Village, or any nearby village. I believe it was the Mist Village. And obviously, because they need resources, this is basically like what would be a third world nation. So they need this. They need the resources as much as they need. I don't know why I'm being redundant here, but they need any resources they can get. So they would agree to do it, in which obviously Tazuna would look at Team 7, right? Remember, this time he's looking at teenagers. He's not looking at 12-year-olds. And looking at Naruto, he's in the drip of Grimmjow. And he sees Sasuke too, the next heir of the Uchiha clan, right? Everyone basically heard of the Uchiha clan. And then he sees Neliel. Like, she has that same look that Naruto gives, like the power look. And like he's kind of feels assured that he's gonna be protected throughout this trip. And well, that's true. But yeah. So obviously Tazuna would say would not really say too much. He's drunk. He doesn't want to say anything too irrational. So Hiruzen would tell him that they'd be leaving tomorrow, or nearby foreseeable future tomorrow, as they'd nod their head and they'd get ready. So the next day, Tazuna would come in apologizing, but he didn't really apologize too much because he didn't say anything out of pocket or anything like that. As he would explain to them where they'd be going, like the map and the coordinates, and the coordinates. I don't know why I didn't say that properly, but he's just reminding them just in case, because he's a local in that area, so he knows how to get there. So they'd be walking through the path, as about maybe 1-2 hours in, they'd realize like this is gonna take a long time, right? They need to get him as fast as possible before night, so they can get started on the bridge and try to get this bridge built as soon as possible. So Neliel would manifest her pet, a Bawa Bawa, as they would all get on. But they were still a bit weirded out, because if you don't know what Bawa Bawa look like, Broski's like a huge ass worm with no eyes, just with a mouth. And I believe he doesn't have any eyes, if I'm not wrong. And it's just sort of weird for a ninja to be looking at that. It's just, no summoning ever looked like that, so they were not used to Bawa Bawa. Let's just say that. So they'd be on the path, as honestly they would blow right past the bottle. I don't really see how they'd even stop for that, but they would pass it, as they would make it to the boat, right? As Nelia would demanifest Bawa Bawa, as they'd ask, or Tazuna would talk to the local who does the boat rides across the river, as the person doing that would tell Tazuna that this was his last favor. They're now pretty much even, and whatever he needs to done, he needs to get it done, so Gato can finally get rid of the place, or be rid of. And obviously didn't hear that part. They're just, I don't know, looking at the scenery, because they're not really worried about that. It's not their business. But obviously they were talking about Gato, and they'd get on the boat. As they'd be on the boat, obviously the mist got a bit thick, but it was they're near the Mist Village, so that's not really too much to worry about. As they'd get off the boat, they'd be walking, as the mist had gotten more thicker. It was even hard to see. Like, Naruto had to use his pesquisa, like, intentionally to see past the mist, and it was pretty hard, like he didn't even see that far past, as suddenly a blade would come flying through the clearing, as this would be none other than Zabuza Momochi, as his executioner blade was going through the air. I don't know why I said through the air, but it was coming towards them. As Kakashi would tell everyone to duck, as they would do so, as Naruto would look at the blade, right, seeing it's like a butcher style blade, and he could see like the amount of the amount of times it's sort of cut through people, in a sense. I know that feels weird, but if you don't know, the execution blade regenerates on the iron in people's blood, so this thing is legit based on other people's blood, so he'd be able to see that. I mean, it'd be a small detail, but he'd be able to see it definitely, and he would see how many times. Like, I guess you can just calculate how much times he killed, and it's in the thousands range. Like, it's genocidal at that point. As Naruto will look towards Zabuza, who is in this bandage-like mask, and with the blade, holding it with no effort, as he would smile, like almost not maniacally, but just pleasurably, right? Feeling this sort of shiver come upon his body, as he's ready for this fight. As Kakashi sees this, and he starts to go about how this is his fight and they need to protect the bridge builder, but Naruto would sort of get real with him. Like, he'd say, like, just this once, let me fight him, right? And obviously Kakashi, knowing his strength, would allow it. I mean, I don't see why not. This is sort of like an honorable feeling he has in his chest to let Naruto fight Zabuza, and that's exactly what would happen. Naruto would be walking up to Zabuza, and he'd get ready to fight him, but what would happen is, I don't actually know, because this is the end of part 2 of What If Naruto was Grimmjow's reincarnation. I actually know what's gonna happen, but I kind of said that to create suspense. But yeah, without further ado, guys, you have came to the end of this. I'll be making part 3 tomorrow after this is uploaded, which will be tomorrow. So it's May 11th, so it'll be May 13th. Hopefully I can have this out. But yeah, without further ado, guys, have a good day.